Thank you, Karen. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is April 13th, 2022. This is a special meeting of the Electrical Work Examining Board being held at 1 o'clock today, April 13th, 2022 via the Zoom webinar. As it is a special meeting, only the agenda items will be discussed today. Those are the only topics for discussion. Let the records show that all board members are present. Are there any comments or concerns of any person present today on anything that's a non-agenda item? Hearing none. Okay. By way of introduction, my name is Larry Valeries, and I am the chairman of the Electrical Work Examining Board. And our first new business item is a review of an application for an E1 license submitted by Mr. Richard W. Litland from 22 Gaelic Way, St. John's, Florida. Karen, I believe Mr. Ritland will probably want to respond to some questions that we may have.
Right.
So if you would, could you let him in on the meeting at this point?
Can you hear us, Mr. Litland? You should be able to speak. It looks like the mic is off on his end.
Yeah, his mic is off. Mr. Litland, can you hear us? If so, your microphone is in the muted state. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep, now we can hear
Yes.
you. Thank you. And I don't know if you were able to turn your video on, but if you can, that'd be great too.
I believe it's on.
He may not be able to. Let me put him over to panelist status.
Okay.
He may not be able to turn this video on unless he's in that status.
Yes.
Technically. All right. Can you try your video now?
Here we go.
There you go.
There it is.
You can see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Litland, we're going to be discussing your application here before the electrical board, the entire board. And I presume that you will be wanting to add some comments or respond to some questions that we may have for you.
Yes, sir.
With that being said, I'd like to swear you in under oath and ask you to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the information you shall give concerning your application for an E1 electrical license to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, would you just again state your full name and spell it for the record in your current address?
Richard Walter Litland, RICHARD WALTER LITLAND at 22 Gaelic Way, St. John's, Florida. Zip code's 32259.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. For the board's information, Mr. Litland's application came before the working group, and the working group was unable to come to a conclusion on his application. That's why it's before the entire board. Okay. I trust. Does the board have the entire application, Karen? You're muted, Karen.
I sure was. Does everybody have it? I sent it over with the agenda.
Agenda, yeah, I see John has it. Everybody has it? Okay, great.
If you don't, just let me know. I can either email it to you and I can also share it if you want me to do that.
Okay, I'll kind of review through the application as I see it with the board and Mr. Litland. And Mr. Litland, we will give you an opportunity to ask questions or comment. And will be asking you some questions at some point too, so just sit tight there. The first document in his package here is a letter to Karen, and it starts out by saying this was on January 12th, 2022. Starts out, it says, I don't have the classroom experience needed for your application. I am a master electrician / electrical contractor in 26 states, and I studied through Mike Holt in courses. I've been an electrician for 42 years. I got my first journeyman's license in 1985 and my first master's license in 2004. I worked in residential, commercial, and industrial. I definitely have the knowledge and experience and would like to find a way to qualify. Going further into the package, there's an electrical verification form. Which Mr. Litland filled out, and it indicates, first one indicates so many hours, commercial hours of work, although it doesn't have any of the boxes checked as to which work. However, if we go to the second page of that same application, it's notarized, and it does indicate that his position while performing work was by the box other is checked was as a manager, and again it's also checked as a senior project manager. So he was full-time working as a manager / senior project manager during some of those hours at DPI ACT industry. There was a copy of his state of Texas electrical contractor license, as indicates applied control technology. Moving on down through the package, come on. These are the PSI's electrical experience verification requests. For some reason, it's indicated New Mexico contractor licensing services. And it also indicates, there we go, that he's had 4,251.5 hours of commercial experience in underground installations of conduit, conductors and cables, rough installation, and trim out. Okay, and again, it's notarized as well. Moving along, there's copies of his Texas license. There's a letter from Amber Electric stating that he was employed by Amber Electric as an electrician's apprentice from June of '96 to August of '97. And Amber Electric apparently is located in Texas as well, based on the stationery. There's a letter from Atkins Electric indicating he worked as an electrician's helper under this person's supervision from September of '97 through January of '98. Atkins is also stationary is Texas. Additional letter from Belton Electric indicating that Mr. Litland was employed by Belton as a journeyman electrician from December 16th of 2002 through April 16th of 2004. Stacy's very capable and qualified electrician, and we wish him all the best. And it looks like Belton is from Texas as well. It's a little faded here. Yes. There's two more, I believe, French Electric. Okay, out of Texas, confirming that Mr. Litton worked for his firm during the period of 87 through the end of August 89. He worked on several projects such as schools, restaurants, shopping centers, malls, service work on all types, residential and commercial. Again, notarized letter. And we have one from Guild Electrical and Telecom Services, confirming that Mr. Litland was employed from March 12th of 99 to August 3rd of 01. And again, from February 25th of 02 to August 13th of 02. He worked as a journeyman electrician performing electrical work during this time. And he worked a total of 6,467 hours, according to Guild Electric. And again, a copy of his Texas license. Also attached is the experience qualifications for a master's license, which indicates that he had to hold a journeyman electrician license for at least 2 years. And a journeyman industrial electrician's license does not qualify for a master's license. And he also indicates he must show 12,000 hours of on-the-job training under the supervision of a master electrician. Okay. The issue before us, in my opinion, is not so much there's a little bit of an issue in my opinion, relative to his on-the-job training, explain that. But there's a lot of documentation here relative to hours of working as an electrician. And the other issue is that we couldn't find anything relative to his related instruction. Okay. Now, relative to his on-the-job training hours, okay. There's the certification here that indicates that he was performing work as a manager and a senior project manager. Okay. So that's just a little concerning to me, and I'm sure we can get an explanation from Mr. Litland in a little bit here on that. But besides that, there is nothing indicated relative to any classroom or related instruction, and he admits that in his letter of January 12th. I've got a couple of questions I'm going to throw out first to Mr. Litland, and then I'll ask the board to pop in with theirs if they would. Mr. Litland, your January 12th letter indicates that you were a master electrician, or you are, excuse me, a master electrician, electrical contractor in 26 states. How were those licenses obtained in those 26 states?
Actually, I'm up to 30 now, but all those licenses were obtained through my study results from Mike Holt's classes. Studying, I started with a 2004. I started with my first master's license. I studied the Stalk Up Guide, and from then on, from 2008, 2011, 2014, 2017, and 2020, I've studied the study guides for the master exam from Mike Holt.
Mm-hmm. Did any of those, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, mostly Mike Holt's courses, I believe that that you're referring to are basically the code courses?
They're the master electrician exam course, preparation course.
Preparation course.
Yes.
And you say you got your first journeyman's license in 1985. What state was that in?
That was in Texas. It was in San Antonio. San Antonio or Texas did not have a statewide license at that time.
Right.
I lived in San Antonio and moved back to Dallas and could not seem to get a reciprocation to Dallas from San Antonio. So I had to start pretty much all over. And then I got my journeyman's again in 2002. I started to take a college course for my journeyman's for Dallas, and it was moving too slow for me. And so I went ahead and took the test and was able to pass it without a problem. From then on, I started studying the Mike Holt courses.
Okay. All right. Another question for you is on these electrical experience verification forms that you filled out for PSI
Yes.
and had notarized. Those, am I interpreting it right that number one, those are basically all OJT, on the job training hours, field work?
Those are going to be from when I was on site managing projects. The one from IES, Industrial Electrical Services, I was also a manager there, but I did a lot of hands-on, had to go out to some projects and do the work myself. But I also managed 2 or 3 other crews in a lot of wastewater projects in Houston. The one from Industrial Electrical, semi-industrial.
Yep.
I held 23 licenses for that company from 2000, starting in 2011 all the way to 2018. Some of those licenses I had to, when I was hired here at this company, had to go back and re-exam for. Some of them, I think 10 of them I was able to hang on to and move into this company.
Is it fair to say that the qualifications for all of the licenses that you hold or held, is indicated in the application anyway, were only required testing?
No, they required the same amount of experience hours. They required pretty similar to what Connecticut requires, except for the classroom hours.
Okay, so safe to say that the others did not require any classroom hours?
They did not. The reason I mean, the way it happened through my career, it wasn't available to me. I joined the union in '96 and I'd already had journeyman status, so I wasn't able to join the apprenticeship without a reduction in pay. So I waived that. And before that, I just didn't have an opportunity for an apprenticeship program.
What is, if I may, why are you looking to obtain an RE1 license here in Connecticut?
We are, I work for a nationwide lighting manufacturer, Orion Energy Systems, and we manufacture our lighting products. And what we're looking to do is to do some self-installations.
What was the name of that company again? I missed it.
Orion Energy Systems, they're out of Wisconsin. It's a public traded company.
Okay. You say Elon?
Orion.
Can you spell it?
ORION.
Okay. Oh, okay, got it now. Oh, right, okay. Okay, so you're looking to do your own installations, you said.
Yes, sir. Excuse me.
And how would you do that here in Connecticut? I mean, if you had a project here in Connecticut, and you had your E1, how would you supply labor for that project?
We would have our own management team, probably hire locally. And so we can manage our own project with our own employees.
You realize those employees would have to have either an E2 license or be registered apprentices working under the direction of the sponsorship of the contractor?
Yes, sir. We would not hire anybody without a license.
Gotcha. Okay. We'll flip it over to the board for any questions that they might have at this point. Anyone want to go first? Go ahead. Are there no questions? Mr. Costello, you're muted too. Wait a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I got codes and standards on in the background as well.
I get it. I understand. We're doing a lot of double duty these days.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Littlin, just a question of the states that you're licensed when you've taken tests. Did any of those states require related instructions as an obligation to meet the licensing requirements?
Now, I have had a couple that waived that option because of my experience. New Hampshire, I'm not sure if they required that or not, but they've given me the opportunity to take their master's test. I had to become a journeyman first and went right to an application for master electrician. So I'm in process of scheduling that one right now and getting studied up for that one. I also have to, of course, on all of these, I have to study business law also to be able to get the licenses.
And second question, with the license that you currently carry, you mentioned quite a few of them. Are the majority of those reciprocal, where it's just paying a license fee?
No, some of them were reciprocation. I believe 10 of them are already had from previous employment that they were still good. And I was able to get those back, either that or I had to take an exam to requalify. Other than that, I believe I've taken 22 tests in all.
And if I understood correctly, it was just through the Mike Holt courses, anything with fire alarm or photovoltaics?
Yes,
or-
there was fire alarm included in some of those tests. There was also for Florida, I had burglar alarms, sign structures, concrete mixtures. There's an unlimited electrical contractor for Florida.
And do you have any transcripts or anything that are generated through those completions?
No, they're all self-study. That's why I don't have any proof of anything.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, anybody else on the board have any questions? I'll run by you. Jackie Larrabee, Ms. Larrabee.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
I have no questions.
Okay. Mr. Jennings.
No questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, because we're gonna move toward a vote here shortly. Mr. Yusa,
No questions.
Mr. Byrd.
Actually, Mr. Costello answered the important one that I wanted to understand was any transcripts to the related training. That's exactly what the statute states is related training. And we're not seeing that here in this particular instance.
Mhm.
So that would have been my question, but Mr. Litland had answered that previously. So thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think I covered every board member here as far as questions go.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I do have a question. So
Yes.
you say that you have a Florida license,
Yes,
right? I thought Florida's pretty strict when it comes to their licensing. So a lot of times, you know, I know even for general contractors, you know, there is classroom work that needs to be done. And you need to pass the test. So I think I was under the impression, and I could be wrong, I don't work in Florida, I've just researched it, but I thought that you had to prove classroom experience before you could sit for the exam, and then after taking the exam, then you prove your on-site hours. So I don't know. And with continuing, I do have CEU documentation for continuing your licensing in that state, because that is also, I think, one of the requirements is similar to Connecticut.
yes, I do. I have continuing education in every state. So that's something that's ongoing, and I do have I have documentation of continuing education for each state.
But for Florida, though, I think you have to have classroom hours before you get that license, before you're allowed to sit for the exam.
No, ma'am, not I got that one in 2012, I believe, and that was not a requirement.
Okay, maybe it's changed. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laramie. Okay, so the overall stumbling block I explained, I think, early on that as I looked at this application, my concern was that there was no classroom related instruction. I certainly don't question let me restate that. It appears that Mr. Litland has plenty of on-the-job training, although I could say this, that in any of the letters, it only refers to the fact that he was employed basically by them, or he did commercial work. I think I'm, from my perspective, I think I'm comfortable with the OJT part of it. The part that is most concerning to me right now is the related instruction, the classroom time, of which we know everybody in the state of Connecticut is required to do those 720 hours of classroom time. And so I know one of the member of the review board disagreed with me, and the third member abstained. So we had a draw, and that's why we're looking at this here. So I'm gonna, at this point, ask once more, any of the board members have any questions that have popped to their mind that they want to ask Mr. Litland?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one thing. You know, as you read this, the state statute here, for a contractor's license, it does say you must hold a journeyman's license for 2 years. And under the journeyman, it says in order to be considered equivalent experience and training, it talks about the signed notarized statements for occupation related employers, which I agree with you, he has satisfied. It also says, and proof of equivalent trade related education authored by a professional educator qualified to such an analysis, which here, in my opinion, I believe is lacking. And I believe that's exactly where your statement is as well. Correct, Mr. Chairman?
That would be correct. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify that particular portion of the state statute.
Does any other board member have any question for Mr. Littlin? If not, I'll ask Mr. Littlin if you want to make any other comments, because I think I think it's pretty obvious or somewhat obvious that there's some concern over the related classroom hours of instruction that you're lacking. You've done continued education, as you indicated, which is again code related and not so much theory related. Somebody else is, no, I thought somebody else was speaking, sorry. So do you want to offer any other information, Mr. Littlin, at this point?
I would just say that I study for a living pretty much right now. So I know I have way over the amount of classroom time needed. I just don't have a way to document that. I would appreciate it I'd appreciate it if y'all could consider that, because I definitely have the classroom time. I just don't have any way to document it.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Youssef, go.
This classroom or study time that you have, did you pay for these classes in any way, or were they just online that you took them? Was there any test given at the end of these classes that you took?
Yes, there's tests at the end of every portion. It's a book that I get from Mike Holt. It's not I'm not doing it by video or anything like that. I'm breaking my books out and going through the book, and I learn theory. And every book there's a quote for it. It begins with theory and then moves on up through the code book and dissects the changes that were made to each year. And also teaches you formulas to how to break everything down, how to calculate. Everything's there that would be in a classroom setting.
Well, I think you understand, as brought up by Mr. Byrd, that there's a state statute and we have to abide by that. So I was hoping that perhaps you would have some type of receipts or tests that have been graded that could be supportive of what you're asking us to take a look at. Usually if you paid for a class, that's, one of the things.
No, sir.
Okay, back to you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Mr. Youssef. Mr. Littlin, moving off the classroom portion of it for a minute and talk about the on the job portion of it. Can you give us some sort of an idea as to what type of on the job work physically you performed out there?
Yes, sir. For the first, I'd say 10 years of my career, it was in residential, rough in, trim out services. And then when I moved back to Dallas and got
those are all hands-on?
Yes, all hands on.
Yeah, okay.
I had my own crew. I was a foreman there in San Antonio until I moved back to Dallas. That's when I joined the union. First of all, I worked for a private company for a while, and then I joined the union, and that's when I got most of my commercial experience. Stayed there for 5 years, opened my own company in 2004. I had that until 2011, which when I joined ACT in Texarkana and Houston area and worked for them, and you have the rest in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was industrial. I learned a lot of industrial through them. And I did some on the job. I was on the job hands-on on most of that with ACT also.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any comments for Mr. Littlin?
One more question there.
Yes.
The fact that I believe he would still have to take an E2 test before just doing anything else. Is this correct?
Well, we're only looking at his request for an E1 at this point.
Okay. So noted.
Okay.
I would be willing to take that journeyman's test if that would help move things.
Okay. All right, would one of the board members like to make a motion in regards to Mr. Litland's application on his E1 license, for an E1 license, based on all the information you have in front of you and the testimony that Mr. Litland was able to provide us with today?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to for a vote for denial of the application based on the related training experience.
You're saying based on lack of
Lack of related training trade experience.
Okay. All right, so the motion is by Mr. Byrd to deny the application, deny approval of the E1 due to lack of related instruction. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Let the record show Mr. Peter Jennings second that. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I just,
Mr. Jennings?
Mr. Chair, I just think that we're, you know, we already have it, it's in the statute, and I just think we're, by approving it, first of all, we're bypassing the whole journeyman aspect of it, and we're going straight to the contractor's license, which is out of, you know, bypasses the statute, and then just eliminating the requirement for classroom instruction. Then we're going to be opening it up with anybody with related experience. And I think it's just going to open up a Pandora's box to the number of, not only the number of applicants, but the number that we're going to have to filter through. And, you know, everybody with some sort of experience working in states that don't have license requirements and things like that, it's just going to be I think we're just going down a slippery slope.
Mhm. Okay. I see Paulette has her video on and her hand
Yes,
up.
yes. I just wanted to
Shannon?
respond to Peter Jennings' comment about that you can't bypass the journey person in order to get a contractor's license. I just want to remind you just to look at, and I'm not saying it's for this particular case, but in general, under 20-334A, subpart A1A, it allows for,
Could you read that for everybody that doesn't, if
yes, sorry,
you don't mind?
20-334A, then in brackets, paragraph A, subpart bracket 1, subpart capital A. So it's the first section that you'll see in 20-334A. This is the section that permits individuals from out of state who have a journey person's license from out of state for the board to consider equivalent experience, but also there's the educational component as well. So just so you know, you don't, if a person's applying for a contractor's license, if they have journey person experience that's equivalent to what is required in Connecticut, they do not have to go and take an E2, but you do have to look at what was the education, what was the training, that kind of thing. So just so you know.
Right, that's right. So, and as you prefaced it, Ms. Annan, by saying that doesn't necessarily apply to this case, but as a general statement, I agree. Mr. Burr, you had your hand up.
Yeah, even as far as like, we're talking about the E2 license here under the journey person, it still says that for those seeking consideration of equivalent experience and training, And it does talk about, again, the equivalent trade-related education authored by a professional educator qualified to offer such analysis. And that is what he's, in my opinion, that's what he's lacking in both, either the journeyman or the contractor's license. And, you know, I agree with Mr. Jennings that if we're doing this, we're allowing this without any trade-related experience or trade-related training. We're going down a slippery slope with that particular statement.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Okay, any other discussion on the motion that's before us? Okay. All right, I'll call for a vote and I'll call you one by one. Mr. Brown.
So the motion is to
Yeah.
deny. I'm in favor of denial.
Yeah, the motion was to deny, yes. Deny,
Okay.
okay. Mr. Jennings,
I'm in favor of denial.
Mr. Youssef,
We'll have to deny.
Mr. Byrd,
Aye, in favor of denial.
Ms. Laramie,
I deny.
and Mr. Costello.
I deny as well.
Okay. All right, so the motion to deny Mr. Litland's application is unanimous based on the vote. So let the record show that your application, Mr. Litland, for E1 is denied. I think you've heard plenty of reasoning why it is denied based on our requirements here, state of Connecticut.
Yes, sir.
I thank you for your patience. And I thank you for your information and fortunately, we were able to do this virtually. You didn't have to come all the way to Connecticut from Texas. I have a lot of friends down there in Texas, so
I'm in Florida now.
oh, you're in Florida? Oh, geez. Well, that's probably even a better place. All right.
Well, I appreciate everybody's time and thank you for hearing me.
You're more than welcome, Mr. Litland. Thank you. So let the record show that that application is denied. Okay. Moving on to our next agenda item. Mr. Litland, you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to leave. It's up to you. I guess he left. Yeah.
Can I just confirm that the vote is unanimous, that this application is denied due to lack of related instruction?
That's correct.
And if I may just add, JP, who is
Yep.
online with us, because it's a decision that's adverse to the applicant, he will be drafting a proposed final decision that will then go to the commission.
Great.
That's correct.
You have that done? Jerry, is that done yet?
Decision will be drafted after this is, after the meeting ends.
All right, thank you, thank you. Okay, moving on to our second piece of business. And that's related instruction requirements for the C8 license. The C8 license is a sign license. I think everybody should be aware of that. What we've come across we've been reviewing the licenses and trying to streamline the application process, and we're very close to that. And within that process, we've included a chart that indicates the requirements of OJT and related instruction for each of the license categories that we're dealing with. What we discovered was that in the case of the C8 license, that the it was located in two different areas of the documents relative to what was required. And so we're trying to firm that up and be a little bit more explicit like we are in the other license categories. So I believe you should have received before you today this document that says Tungsten Community College on it. Okay. Worked with Victor Mitchell from Tungsten Community College. And he worked with Russ, last name just escapes me, but from National Sign. The sign contractors are a very small organization. There's only about 40 or 50 licenses in the state for that. And Tungsten usually puts together their continued education program. And as such, we wanted to get something documented that the board would agree to or approve for required training for the C8 journey person license. So what's been presented before you here is that it would require 144 hours of related instruction. And that related instruction would be comprised of 30 hours of basic electricity, OSHA 30 for 30 hours, specific code review relative to signs of 12 hours, detailed lockout tagout of an FBA 70E for 4 hours. Those total 76 hours. And then additional trade related instruction relative to engineering sign structures, crane familiarity, awareness basically of neon transformers and power supplies because they still exist out there. The UL 48 electric sign requirements and digital signage. We kind of go from the old-fashioned neon transformers and power supplies, the ancient signage, to the more current signage of digital signage that we're seeing more and more of today, where they need to utilize a laptop to program and so forth. In those categories would total 68 hours, okay? Those categories would be broken down, obviously, in more detail as to what the content of them are, just like any of our other courses. So what's before you is just that. It's a recommendation that C8 license would require 144 hours of 144 hours of related instruction to obtain that journey person's license, which would comprise of this breakout that's before you. Understanding that when you think about signage, it's you think of it as being pretty simple because as unlimited contractors, we provided a outlet, a point for the sign people to tie into. But there's structural issues concerned with mounting of signs. There's engineering where they do concrete work for pylon signs, some structural reinforcement of rebar and steel in those foundations and footings, along with all the newer sign technology. So with that, I just open it up for discussion with the board, and we would certainly like to see us be able to approve this. So board members have any questions on it? Yeah, Mr. Brown.
Larry, anything on motors? I mean, I know some of the old signs use motors, like what am I thinking of? South of the border and stuff like that. When you go driving down 95, you see those signs that have motors on them. And maybe communication was the other topic I don't see listed. Maybe in the digital signage aspect of it, but I don't know. They don't really, do they cover any of that stuff?
The
70E sounds 4 hours. That's a crash course. That's a tough, that's a lot, you probably make that a 16 or 32-hour course easily for 70E and detailed lockout tagout. I don't know, but
Mhm. I think to answer one question, communications, I think would be under subcategory of digital. Okay. I think awareness on the point of the motor situation, that's a very good point. Okay. That probably could be added under the basic electricity. I'm going to say right now, looking at this. Motor operated. Yeah, because there are not too many of them, but there are a few. I totally agree. And lockout, tag out, you thought, well, the UL portion was not broken down into any specific hours, but at this point, but lockout, tag out, I could agree with that being more than 4 hours myself. So again, I'm open to suggestions there too. Somebody else had their hand up here a minute ago. Oh, Mr. Byrd did.
Mr. Chairman, is there, I just went to the Department of Labor. What is the apprenticeship criteria here? Are they registered?
No, the Department of Labor, this is being a limited license. The Department of Labor has no apprenticeship program for this. It would
Okay, that's,
not offer one. It would be really offered through the Department of Consumer Protection. Where
okay,
the department would issue a card for that apprentice.
okay. All right. Then the other, they're just like, I'm just gonna reiterate what Mr. Brown had spoken about, especially under the lockout, tagout, NFPA 70E. I think additional hours should be required under that particular topic,
Mhm.
especially dealing with, they're basically picking up from our point out to their signs. And I think that's an important issue for them to understand.
Okay. How many hours would you recommend?
I would go by the recommendation of what Mr. Brown said, somewhere between, at a minimum of about 16 hours to upwards of 32. I mean, you can run
Yeah.
you can run easily a 16-hour course on NFPA 70E and then another 8 hours on lockout, tagout.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. Hurlbert has got his hand up. I see it.
Yes, who's gonna build out this curriculum outline?
Excuse me, Bill. Excuse me, Rich.
Who's gonna build out the curriculum outline, the text and everything associated to it?
That would be done with Vic and Russ from National Sign.
Okay, so the Connecticut contractors, the Connecticut Sign Contractors Association is gonna be involved, correct?
That's exactly correct.
All right, because the last time we did an exam review, in addition to inviting all the board members, we did invite representatives from the Connecticut Sign Association. So that way there, we have direct input from the industry. So once this curriculum outline is complete, you're saying Vic, who's gonna do it?
I said it would probably include Vic Mitchell, and it would probably include Russ Hossman. I finally remembered his name, from National Sign.
Is there anybody from the VOTEC school system or maybe?
And we could certainly include anybody from the VOTEC. We would have to go out and ask for people that would want
Right.
to put some
And then-
input into it.
And then maybe we can get somebody from one of the local unions, 35 or 90. Or local 3 that does signs. And, industry contractor
Mhm.
on the union side.
Yeah, yeah,
So
there'd be no problem with that.
maybe Paul would know of somebody. I mean, it used to be the Murphy Sign Company, but I don't know if they still exist or not. And then after this curriculum gets complete and reviewed and approved by the board, then we need to determine that it's going to be taught for 1 year. So within 1 year's time, people are gonna be taking the PSI exam. And we're gonna have to change, maybe change the curriculum outline on the exam, the related texts that are used or recommended for reference to take the exam. And maybe just double check all the exam questions in the database to make sure they're still pertinent and up to date for this curriculum outline. And of course, the new codes that get adopted in October.
Correct. Yeah, and I think, Rich, those are, really good points in comments. I think even though assuming we were to approve the basic outline here, okay, today, I would say that it would not totally become effective, and we would have to pick a date for that so that there's time to develop it. And as you said, I know PSI has total different categories. I think they have 3 categories of testing that they test on for signs. So, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would also like to, if we're going to open this up for, technical high schools and, the local trades, I think we should look at also trade associations, because I know there are other trade associations that do have members that are signed contractors as well.
Yes, and I think Rich Bird, I think most of those probably belong to that the sign association group. So yeah, we would definitely reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
So any other comments on this from anybody right now? All right, so what we're really looking to do is to approve these categories, or these classification categories, totaling, I'm going to say 144 hours in for a 1-year course over a 1-year period. 1-year period being the OJT, 2,000 hours. Anybody else got any? Paul, yes, I'm sorry.
Sure. Most of the limited license, aren't they a 2-year curriculum for related, like the L and the C categories?
Yes, they are, but I think to some extent they are much more
Because of the scope of work.
material that needs to be covered because of the scope of the work.
Yeah.
Not to minimize the signs. Okay. So, I mean, if you feel that if the board feels that we should increase the hours, we could do that, but I kind of don't think it's necessary, particularly with the C licenses being required to do continued education every year. That's an additional opportunity to continue to get them brought up to date on anything we feel is necessary. And any other questions by anybody, comments? All right, would somebody be willing to make a motion that the requirements for the C7, C8, actually it's really the C8 requirement here because we're talking about related instruction, would need to conform to these categories. The hours could be adjusted as we develop the balance of the curriculum, the content, real content portion.
I make a motion that we accept the proposed curriculum
The outline,
outline. That's it.
and that would be for 144 hours.
Yes, I think that's appropriate for a 1-year apprenticeship. And
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Brown, second that. Any other discussion on that? All right, I'll call for a vote again, starting with Mr. Brown,
Yay.
Mr. Jennings,
Yes.
Mr. Yusa,
yes,
Mr. Byrd,
Yes,
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
and Ms. Laramie. Sorry,
Yes.
calling you last. It just happens to be.
No, I don't care. That's fine.
That's how you show up on my screen. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to change that next go around. Okay, okay, so let the motion carry that. The motion is,
Looks like Paulette raised her hand. I don't know if that matters.
Paulette did?
Is it-
Certainly not to
is it a
vote.
vote?
Oh, there you are. Every time somebody does something, they move around on the screen, you know, it's hard. to
I
keep track.
know, it's so weird. Before you get to your next, oh, just finish what you're doing here before I speak. Sorry about the vote.
Okay, all right, so, all right, so you didn't have anything to add to this. Okay, so the motion carries, and this outline will prevail, and we will post this. I'd like to ask one other question though, of everybody. I'd like to make an effective date on this. Because if we have an application come in for some sign people in the next month or whatever, we're gonna have to at least go by what history has dictated. So this is April 13th. So we say that this needs to be completed by license renewal date. That'd be a good date.
Yeah.
So this would become effective. That's
I think
9.
that makes the most sense.
yeah, keep everything in proper order.
Yeah, there'll be 9/1, right?
actually, it would be October 1st because the
10/1.
license renew on 9/31
Right, okay.
or 9/30 of the year.
All right, so it will be effective 10/1.
Larry, I have a question on this curriculum you're talking about again.
Yes, Mr.
Don't you think we ought to see if we can get it built first and get the curriculum outline all written up and everything? I mean, to put a drop dead date when this can't be offered through any educational program, that's kind of difficult.
I understand your problem, but I'm trying to resolve another problem at the same time, and that is the streamlining that the commissioner is looking for us to do on the applications. In completing that chart, because that's the only hole we have in it right now.
All right, then the only thing you have to think about, and I'm sure you could figure it out, is
Thanks.
if you take your new curriculum outline that you have in front of you there, you need to look at it and say, okay, where can I go to school to get each of these content areas, even though it may be a mismatch of places to go.
Mhm.
Like, I understand lockout, tagout, that's common, it's online course probably. Maybe I'm wrong there, maybe there's trainers, readily available. I think somebody from the sign industry needs to look at it and say, where can I get all these content areas fulfilled in the interim until some school says, oh, we want to teach that entire curriculum outline.
Mhm.
That's all.
And it could be between multiple schools, because for example, on the E2 license apprenticeship, Penn Foster only offers a portion of the actual curriculum, and the other portions have to be obtained elsewhere. So, yeah, whether you would get one provider to do the entire course, or it would be broken up into different providers, that's something we would have to see how that would come out down the road.
Right.
I mean,
But, so in the meantime, as long as people that apply on or after whatever date you come up with, September 1st or September 30th of 2022, they have, we can at least tell them as they call the office, where they can at least get the various content areas, even if it's at multiple locations, until some school or provider says, we want, like IMTI, or even the Connecticut Sign Association says, we're going to teach this course as a whole. You know what I'm saying? That's
Right.
all I'm trying to get to.
Correct.
And luckily, we don't have lots of people applying for this license type.
No,
So, but I don't want to see somebody get stuck in a pinch and say, well, I can't fulfill these requirements because there's no operants for certain content areas.
correct. And the other thing is that between now and, let's say, October 1st is an effective date, we would have to utilize a similar criteria that you've been using in the past on their experience in training.
You mean Herbert specials?
Yeah, Robert Special, okay. So, yeah, I think there's no question we have to do that. I mean, and as you said a minute ago, there are far and few between applications for the C8 license anyway. So, all right, do we have a motion that this would become effective October 1st? Rich Bird, your mic on. Rich, would you take your mic off?
I'm sorry, Mr. Valeries. Yes, I have a motion to make this effective October 1st of 2022.
Second,
I'll second that.
Peter, okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. I'll take a vote, starting with Ms. Laramie.
I'm in favor. Thank you.
Mr. Costello.
I approve.
Mr.
Yes.
Bird. Mr. Bird.
Approve, yes.
Mr. Yusa. I'll come back to him. He's on the phone. Mr. Jennings
Yes, I'm in favor.
and Mr. Brown.
Yes, I am in favor.
And we got Mr. Yusa hold out there. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I think that was a waiver of okay. Mr. Yusa, you is supported that motion, making this effective October 1st, 2022.
Yes, I listened to it, and unfortunately that call came in. I apologize for that. Yes, I do support it.
Okay, thank you. All right, then let the record show that the motion is approved and it was unanimously approved. Okay. Moving on to the next item, which is the review of the proposed 2023 electrical continued education curriculum. And
Mr. Chairman,
Paulette's waving her hands over there.
I see Paulette.
I made sure you saw
Paulette's
me.
jumping out of her seat over there.
So before you go on to your next agenda item, I had a question for Rich Bird. You were reading or from a document that you said was the law, and
Oh,
you,
this is,
what were you quoting from? Because I didn't recognize it at all.
oh, this doesn't have to do with this.
No, this has to
okay.
do with the first case.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Rich, again.
sorry about that.
It's okay.
Under the Department of Consumer Protection, let's see.
Looking at the website,
Yeah, under the prerequisites, and then it said required documentation for application. That's where it talks about it right there. Proof of equivalent trade-related education authored by a professional educator qualified to such an analysis.
okay, so it's not the law, but it's, I don't know who put that up there. Who had put, is Rich still with us? Rich,
Yeah.
Blame it on him.
I don't know, where'd you find it?
On the Department of Consumer Protection under electrical license.
All right, hang on.
Yeah,
Let
and
me
it
go
says
there.
required documentation.
Hang on.
Larry, unfortunately, I do have to leave. I've got another emergency that just came up.
Okay. We still have a quorum anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, the language on the website is, and it's all throughout our website for the occupational trades. I don't know who did all that wording, so it's basically just a guideline type wording, but I'm not sure who did all that fancy language there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just wanted, okay, so I know it's on the website, but that's not what's in the law. So just so you know, when more accurately, it should be referred to as information on the website. So our law just pretty much says education, and it doesn't go into any detail as to what that would look like. But when you assess it, then you would look at, in terms of when you're looking at how Connecticut's apprenticeship program is and what the training looks like. Pretty much you're going by that information and not to that detail as to it has to be. And I think some of the language was something about a teacher qualified, or I can't remember.
Professional educator.
Right, a professional educator. So that's not the law, because that's not in the law, but it is some information that's on our website that I'm not familiar with because I don't tend to go to that section of the website. But we'll take a look at it. Go ahead, Larry.
But Paulette, in reality, and I totally hear what you're saying about the regs and the stats, but when we have somebody from the outside, they go to the website and they look at it and they see something like that, that's what they're going by. And then they'll challenge us, and then we'll say, well, don't pay attention to that. Doesn't mean anything. Okay. It's relative to the statutes and the regulations. And yet we are trying to be, we should be the board trying to interpret those statutes and regulations. And you can't put everything, every single item, and I'm going to use the verbiage that Mr. Byrd used and you questioned about a professional person. Okay, I'm going to use it that way. You can't put all that information is not always in the statute. So the statute is in the regs are really guides, in my opinion, that we have to make sure we at least meet. We can't underestimate them. By the same token, we've got to be able to interpret what the board feels is an intent. I mean, it's kind of like having a statute, a regulation, or a policy, I guess is what I'm going to say.
Right, but just keep in mind though, that the board's, any kind of policy or guidance, for example, that the board may want to issue is considered regulation making, and the boards aren't authorized to make regulation. So declaratory rulings, of course, if someone requests an interpretation of the statutes or declaratory ruling, that's fine. The board does have that authority as well as the department. But in terms of policies and guidance, that would be considered regulation making. As you know, with regulations, there's a comment period for the public. The only point I'm trying to make about this is when you look at something online, for example, that's on DCP's website, we can't say it's the law, especially when you have other interpretive things online. And this is the thing. I know that the board, Larry, you're involved with this, trying to get information to applicants so they know exactly what they need to submit with their application so that we can get full applications. That's one thing, but I just want to make sure that when someone says the law, that we're actually seeing what's in the regulation and the statute. Otherwise, when I heard that, I was like searching through saying, oh my God, is that in there? I'm looking, but I don't see it. So that's the thing I just want to make sure that when we're talking about the law, and we, DCP, we interpret the law, but we can't go so too far because there aren't those details that's in the law. And of course, we know that courts tend to be the ones that if a case is appealed, et cetera, or a case is filed in court, that now the court will interpret what the law means. And then we go by what's the court what the court interpreted, as well as, what's in the actual statute and regulation. That's the point I'm trying to make, because when I heard law, immediately I look at the statute and the regulation, and I didn't realize there was this additional interpretation or guidance on our website about it. So I just wanted to make sure that to clarify that.
Yeah, and the other thing, this board is works very hard to be very consistent in its rulings, in its decisions, is based on its history. And we certainly don't want to be in a situation where we permit applicant A to go for a license, but applicant B, who has the same exact situation, a few years later, we deny.
Sure.
We're looking, this board, I know for a fact, this board is very adamant about trying to be very consistent.
Sure.
We do, and I think we are. So I think, without putting words into Mr. Bird's mouth, I think he was referring to that because from the outside, you would assume that that's part of the law, being that it's on the DCP website.
Yeah, but we don't want to make that assumption that it's.
No,
Yeah.
not us
Yeah.
necessarily.
Right.
The applicant.
I'm not sure what they would look at it as, whether it's the law or information, I'm not sure. But I just want to make sure that when we refer to it, it's information on DCP's website. Because sometimes, like Richard said, he doesn't know who put it up there. I have no idea who put it up there. I have no clue. Were you involved with that, Chairperson Ballard? I don't know.
I've been involved almost as long as Richard's been involved, and I have no idea who puts what on the DCP website. It's, I'm going to say, it does. It probably changes commissioner to commissioner and things of that nature. I mean, the steady hand we have here is, I think Richard over me by about 2 years, something like that. So.
And we are trying to go
I think
through
your point is understood anyway.
Okay. All right.
And well noted. So I
Yeah,
appreciate.
and as we go along, like we hear, people have quoted from our website, and then we're like, oh, does it say that? And also sometimes when the law changes, I mean, unfortunately, we're trying to keep in step, but sometimes it's hard to keep in step with when a change is made to go to the website now and change it. We have to, do an overhaul of the information that's on the website, because, statutes change, regulations change. And now we have to go back and make sure that it's consistent with what's in the law. So that's a work in progress, especially what's on our website. So we're going to have to take a moment to review what's on there to make sure that's consistent with what's.
Yes, it does need to be updated, and in my opinion, the sooner the better, because I get a lot of emails all the time. Just simply, what do I have to send in?
Right.
It's not there, and it's not in the application accurately. So that really needs to be a priority, because it's just creating a lot of extra work for everybody else here.
And I think what we've done to help that situation right now is by putting together what you need to submit for an application. Karen and Pam myself have been working on. Hopefully will eliminate a lot of those headaches. It's going to either eliminate them or create more.
Great. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Paulette.
Thank you. I'm leaving as well, okay? Because you're gonna do the next year's curriculum outline anyway, right?
Yeah, I'm doing that next year.
Yeah. All right, so I gotta go because I got something else I got here.
Okay, no problem. All right,
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Yep. Bye-bye.
And you don't need me for that, so I'm going to go too.
No, we
Okay.
don't need to, Paulette.
Oh.
Toodaloo, toodaloo.
Oh. Starting to become a little bit
Enjoy the long.
little bit of a rough meeting
Richard
here.
is still my person, so no matter what he says, still my guy.
Okay,
Enjoy the long weekend.
you too, Paul.
Bye.
There's a Benjamin Pahope.
Oh, yes.
on here.
He's a new attorney. I'm sorry. Is Ben still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, there he
There
is.
he is. Oh, I'd like to introduce our newest attorney, in my unit, Pro, and he's mostly going to be doing real estate, and I will give him an opportunity to do some of the trades cases. But Ben, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey guys. So I'm Ben Paholke. I'm a new staff attorney here at the Department of Consumer Protection. Previously, I was at the Office of the Attorney General of Guam in their Consumer Protection Division, mostly in charge of litigating and regulating tech companies. I did a lot of homeless prevention work, especially during the eviction moratorium back in the early days of the plague. Yeah, now I'm here mostly doing real estate and any other pet projects Paulette wants to put me on. It's been lots of this meeting has been over my head, but that's been my experience with electricians my whole life. My dad's an aircraft mechanic, my mother's an electrical engineer. I'm kind of used to it at this point. But hey, thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me introduce myself a little bit here.
Well, thank you, Ben, and I welcome to the department
Thank you.
and to our little circus.
Of all the boards meetings I've been on, this is refreshing. I'll say that.
In a good way.
That means, that means he hasn't been on very many board meetings.
It is my third day, so.
All right, thank you very much.
All right,
Okay.
bye.
All right, have a good weekend.
You too, bye.
All right, so let's go back. Let's get back on subject here and go to new business. Item 3, the 2023 electrical continued education curriculum. You've all received both the limited and unlimited versions that have been put together. Let me give you a little background on what's going on here. As everybody knows, many license holders this past year were very surprised to find out that they didn't have a full year to do their continued ed because of the law that changed, and they didn't have any real notification on it. So in order to try to comply with the new law going forward, number one, move forward to put this package together very soon, get it out early. In addition to that, I'll go through this package with you, but the means that the providers will submit their curriculums from now on is going to be somewhat different. Basically looking at the same information requirement, but they'll be submitting everything by uploading it online to a DCP website. As soon as that is uploaded and they hit submit, I will get notified, as well as Karen and others, that a provider has put their stuff up and it's ready to be reviewed and acted on. We do plan on having a meeting in the near future, which I'm hoping we can even maybe set a date today on with all providers, and at that meeting we will have somebody there explaining to them how they will upload it, and they will get new credentials to get onto that site. Basically what happens is that once they upload it, it's reviewed. Let's say, for example, certificate of insurance has been submitted, but it's out of date. As I go through it, I would reject it, or we would reject it. At the end of looking at all the categories that we need, it would then allow us to, it would then pop up and say, these are the areas that you rejected. And we would be allowed to put a comment in there such as certificate of insurance is expired, submit a new one, and so forth for anything that was rejected. Then I just submit, that would generate an automatic email right back to the provider and be told that they need this information. They would then take that, correct it, upload it again. The same process would happen, get notified that those corrections have been made. We'd look at them, approve them, and then the final email would go out to the provider indicating that their program's approved. Okay. So it will work very nicely. I can tell you that. I've experienced it. I've been working on a little bit with that one. The last, I don't know, maybe half a dozen or so. We're done by upload, but in a different format. The new format is going to be really good. So if we can go through the packages real quick, and I want to start with the unlimited one. The front page basically it hasn't changed. Okay, there's nothing new there. Second page, there's some changes that have been made there. In particular, first item where we normally would ask for the binders or the thumb drives and so forth, it's a notification that a special meeting, and if we can determine the time and date of that meeting now, we'll put that in on these things once they get published. Will be held for all providers to understand the new electronic method of submitting. Okay. We indicated that the providers should submit their completed applications as soon as possible so that the review and approvals, and I'm saying allow 2 weeks just because there's other things happening in everybody's life, can be completed by June 15th. So that compliance with Public Act 2137 can be obtained by the licensee by completing their applications 90 days prior to renewal. Going down through the next list of items, all the bullets, nothing's really changed there. On the first page, obviously, we've indicated that the certificates have to indicate for the 2023 renewal year. And that we made reference to that the code book that they will need to have with them or electronic version would be the 2020 NEC. While that's not approved yet by the state, all indications is that it will be, and it's time for us to hop into that in any event and bring people up to date. On the next page, you'll notice that the bullets in red, I put this notice in there because this is legislation that exists right now that's been approved through the General Law Committee. It's been it's in the House, and all indications are that it will pass. That in-person class sizes will be limited to 50 attendees per person. Online will be limited to 25 attendees. God bless you, Jackie. No classes will be offered or held at a contractor's place of business. And that providers shall retain an audio-visual recording of each class for a period of 30 days after the class and make such recording available to the department upon request. Pertinent changes here is that continued ed online will be permitted. Class sizes, obviously, we've been trying to hold to that, and we've done that in the past relative to the COVID and so forth. Been a lot of questions about why can't I have this in my office, whatnot, and we talked about this. The program was first put together that no classes can be offered at a contractor's office because we don't want a situation where this program develops a competitive deal for employees or a contractor advertising that he does this and somebody else doesn't. And the purpose of the audio visual recording is also helpful from a monitoring standpoint on how these classes are going, because we all know that the department does not have the staff to go out and monitor these. However, periodically we can take a look at them if we so desire, especially if we get a complaint. Usually we get a complaint pretty quick. Moving on, the fire marshal certificates hasn't changed. The evaluation form has not changed. The curriculum outline, excuse me, pretty much like it was before, the front end of it relative to statutes and regulations. Got a half hour in there to them to inform. Material needs to be continued to be put in the handbook so they can keep referencing it. Doesn't, the provider does not have to go through each section line by line. It's there for reference. They can hit the main topics. The ratio of journeymen to apprentices remained in there because there's still people that have problems understanding that, I guess. And then, excuse me, under the state building code, we listed the proposed model codes that will be accepted once the building code is accepted later this year. And again, still refer everybody to the state building officials website for amendments and currently adopted codes. Under safety, we put a half hour in there just to cover the top 10 OSHA violations for 2021. Okay. And it also shows the previous year's data, which is good information really for everybody to understand and good topics to hit on. A number of the violations have gone down, which is good, but then some have increased. A few have increased. And then last but not least, on the unlimited is the part 3 hours of the National Electrical Code, the 2020 code. Look at the review, the symbols to be used for identifying changes from the previous code, because there's some changes that are made there as to how they identify things. I think it's important to review the arrangement of the code book with people, because if they know if they understand the arrangement of the code book, they can find things they're looking for, as opposed to just going through the index and going all over the page book, the code book. And then last but not least, the review of the changes from the 2017 to the 2020 code in chapters 1 through 3. Okay. That, in my opinion, is more than adequate enough information requirements for the 4 hours. There's a fair amount of changes in chapters 1 to 3 that I've looked at. Some of them are maybe there's a fair number of definition changes. There's a fair number of other changes relative to the tables. Chapter 3. So I think the providers in the past have done a great job highlighting all those changes. And there's plenty of books available using them for reference. So I think, quite frankly, in my opinion, the best book out there on the illustrated changes or the changes in the code is put out by the Independent Association of Electrical Inspectors. That seems to be the better, in my opinion, the better book. There's going to be a lot of complaints this year from people, license holders, because they got to buy a code book. Because every time we have to buy a code book, they complain. And the code books right now are about 200, 210. I think they're expensive, but by the same token, it's your occupation, it's your livelihood. It's used for 3 years at least anyway. So it's $70 a year. Okay. But you can't buy it in pieces. And some people would prefer to use the electronic version anyway, which is up to the providers. Any question on any of that so far? No, okay, I don't think so. I didn't think there would be. The next package is on the limited license holders. Okay. Again, the front end stays the same as what we just reviewed relative to let them know about online continued education and evaluations and the statutes and so forth. Also kept the safety information in there for them, where the changes will take place, obviously, as we've done in the past. In part 3, the 3 hours of instructional time. Again, I want each license type to review the symbols to be used for identifying the changes, because they do refer to the code. Again, important, even though they're limited licenses, to understand the arrangement of the code book and any applicable changes to Article 90 in chapters 1 through 3. Again, there's some definition changes that I know affect the limited licenses, for example. They're minor, but it's important for them to know that. And then relative to the remaining categories of limited licenses, pretty much development of the curriculum as it affects their particular trade license by the provider, which we've continued to do in the past, and it seems to work pretty well. More a chance of getting them familiar with the their industry things, their industry products, so to speak, and changes of that nature. Any question on that? Or any of those? I've still asked for on the handbook. Okay. That the copy of that handbook be submitted to the department. Okay, because I want to see, I'd like to see proof for us on our side that somebody just doesn't put it in electronically, but doesn't actually publish it. And I think those handbooks are bad word, but handy for the license holder to have with them, because most of the providers I see have done a really, every year they seem to get better and better at what they're doing on them. There's more information. So, are there any questions on any of what I just put before us on the continued education for next year? There's probably going to be some confusion a little bit by the providers. Some are going to complain that they're overlapping, 20 last year's and this year, next year's, this year's and next year's. But at some point that's going to happen till we get this on the right cycle. After this year, it should fall out pretty well. So if nobody has any concerns or questions or modifications, I'd like to seek a motion to approve these two documents as submitted, and we'll get Karen to get them posted on the website and notify the providers that they are there and that there'll be a meeting, and we'll talk about a meeting date after this is approved. So is there a motion? Mr. Byrd?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve both the unlimited and limited 2023 electrical continued education curriculum outline application.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Costello seconded. Okay, is there any other discussion on it?
Nice
Okay,
job
here.
putting it together, Larry.
Pardon me?
Nice job putting it together.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
looks
agree. I
good.
think it's important we get it out as early as possible.
Yep.
And I did look at the language, Mr. Valerie's definitely about intended, because as of right now, and you did speak of it, the 2022 building code isn't technically approved. But that's a formality, like you said earlier. So I think it's I think we're in good shape.
Yeah, good. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous. I assume Karen is still with us. Yeah, she's there. She's just muted. There she comes.
I'm here.
There you are.
I'm here.
Okay, so you've been getting all that, right?
I have been.
Okay, all right. I'd like to try to set a date and time. Unless the board so agrees to let Karen and I just determine that, because we'll have to look at it relative to other Zoom meetings and team meetings and what other virtual meetings that exist. But I would like to be able to get this posted on the website, and then at the same time, get a letter out to the providers telling them that it's posted there, that they can start compiling information, but that we will have a meeting to discuss it further with them at a certain date and time. Is everybody comfortable with it, with Karen and I just doing that?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
you good with that, Karen?
Yeah, so we're going to want a meeting with all the providers for a little bit of training on the new way of doing things. But
Right.
did you want are you saying you're gonna want another board meeting on this, like a regular board meeting with everybody here?
No, we'll certainly invite the board members, our board members, to the meeting with the providers.
For the training, okay, all right. And
Yeah.
then this would go on the May 13th agenda, I would assume. We can regroup and see where we are next time we meet.
Yeah, we bring an update to that at that point.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I'm thinking that our meeting with the providers maybe somewhere right around that time.
Okay, that was my next question. So you're suggesting to have a meeting with the providers somewhere around, let's see, May 13th. Did you want me to try to do that before May 13th or after the 13th meeting? I mean, I was thinking the middle of May myself.
Yeah, that's so. Let me ask you a question. Do we have much on the agenda for May right now?
I don't know.
Okay. You still
I
got
work with
files?
6 different boards. There's no way I can envision that quickly. I'm really not sure,
Okay.
honestly.
All right. Well, you and I talk about it on this afterwards, and it's conceivable we might be able to use the same date and time,
Right.
and maybe depending on what we have for an agenda, we could do a quick meeting and then hop right into it.
Right. Right. I didn't even think about that. Maybe we could do it as part of the board meeting if there isn't too much else going on, or, even that day, the day of the meeting, try and schedule it for 10 or 10:30 or something. That would probably be a really good idea to do it that day if we can.
And when we put our letter to go out to them together, we need to, we can't make it a mandatory, but we can strongly recommend.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I'll work with you on
Yep.
that.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Sounds good.
I know I have to do this technically, but comments or concerns of any person present here today that hasn't spoken? Seeing how it's just us here again, here none. Anybody have any, well, no, special meeting, can't bring anything else up. Is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Byrd,
I'll make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
okay. Any discussion on that, people?
No discussion.
Nope.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Karen, thank you.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you,
welcome.
everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everybody.
Good holiday.
See you later.
Back to everybody's